Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. It is a hump day, cold hump day, -1 out there right now. Going to be a high of around 11 this afternoon. 6:42 is the sunrise, and 5:22 is the sunset, and precipitation is not likely. So, we're in John chapter 7, John chapter 7, and uh, so the disciples are um, telling him, it's about the time of the Passover feast and to go into Jerusalem. His brothers are there, and um, not even his brothers believed him. Okay, believed in him. So that's 7 verse 5. And so he's talking and he's having a conversation with them, and um, he tells them to go. He's going to stay back. Um, but then he goes privately, and he keeps himself um, un, unrevealed, or not necessarily sneaking, just not being open about who he is, um, and then he's listening, right? He's listening to the people talk, and it says in verse 13, "For fear of the Jews, no one spoke openly of him," which it's a big change between that and a few years later when Stephen is being asked in about him, and Stephen gives a big soliloquy of um, Jewish history leading up to Jesus when he's stoned, right? And so it's a big difference between that and this, when nobody wants to speak openly about him. And then in about the middle of the feast, this is verse 14, Jesus went up to the temple and began teaching. So even though he didn't reveal himself previously, he rolls right up into the temple, right, and starts teaching and that takes some authority, that takes some gall too, right? So he's operating as if the the temple is his. Okay, he's operating as if the temple is his, and it is. And the Jews, they start to marvel about how he's teaching, and they say, "How is it this man has learning when he's never studied?" And the answer is because he is the Logos, because he is the Word, because he is the study, right? He is theology. He created everything. He's been there before and the end of time, right? Like, he's already been here, and he's already sitting at the end of time right now. Like, he's in all times all at once. So it's not that he's already been here, he is here and at the end of time right now. It's even trying to vocalize and verbalize and put a thought or cognize this in our with our finite minds is difficult. It's difficult. we don't I don't think we have the words to explain his deity fully. And so Jesus answered them, "My teaching is not mine, but his who sent me." Right? So that's how. Okay, that's how. Because his teaching is of God. Now it says in verse 17, and listen to this. This is a key statement here. "If anyone's will is to do God's will, he will know whether the teaching is from God or whether I'm speaking of my own authority." So that here's the secret to the heart to spot false teaching. This is the heart to spot false teaching. And Paul writes to Timothy about how to spot false teaching, or to watch for false teachers, right? And he talks about it in Galatians and everywhere, really, right? But how do we have the ability to spot teaching that um, is God's, is from God, or whether it is speaking on one's own authority? It's, do you have the will to do God's will? Right? Do you have the will to do God's will? Because if you do, that um, that false teaching is going to come out. That false teaching is going to um, strike a chord. It's not going to sit right. It's going to, your spidey sense is gonna go up. You know the, it's gonna, things are gonna start pinging for you. Why? Because it's not God's will, right? And it says, now look how definitive it is. If anyone's will is to do God's will, he will know. He will know whether the teaching that is from God or whether I am speaking of my own authority. Okay, so there's no doubt, right? There's no doubt. If your will is to do God's will, you will know what the teaching is. Verse 18, the one who speaks of his own authority seeks his own glory, but the one who seeks the glory of him who sent me is true, and in him there is no falsehood. In him there is no falsehood, right? So here's a key to the heart of the false teacher. Okay, seeks his own glory, and in him there is falsehood, right? Things aren't true. So something that I said that's been like clicking on me is a while back I said there was like 50 chapters in John. There's 21 chapters in John, and I don't know what I was thinking. I was extra sleepy that day or what, but just I don't know what was on my mind. But that's not true. There's only 21 chapters, and so we've got to do like two of these per chapter a day, something like that. I don't know. My math was wrong. My head was in the clouds, and yeah. So there's an anyway. The heart of the teacher is to get it right. Okay, the heart of the teacher is to get it right and to be true about it, and there's many times where, over the years of being a Christian, right? I'm 12 years in or something like that, 11 or 12. I think I'm 12 years in. I've heard several times where a preacher would get up the next day and apologize for making a mistake. I heard one well-renowned preacher say something in a message that was risque. Could have been could have had I don't know, but he apologized in the middle of the sermon, and prayed on it right in the middle of the sermon. Stopped everything. Said what I said was offensive, and shouldn't have said that, and apologized and prayed on it right in the middle of the sermon. And I mean, this guy's got thousands of followers on YouTube. And I say followers like in the YouTube lingo, right? So yeah. Anyway, there's no falsehood. There's no falsehood in him. Not that we don't make mistakes, because the flesh is there, and there, whatever the reasons are, they happen, and we try to get it right. How do we do that? We apologize. We correct the mistake. Or sometimes we stumble on a word and we don't even realize it. I did that in my last message, preaching. I said I don't want to walk around sinless for the rest of my life. I'm talking about the curse that's on Satan, and because he's still walking around here in sin and has not been mercifully put to death, right? And what I meant to say was I don't want to walk around here sinful for all eternity until the end. Anyway, so those things happen. But what's the heart behind it, right? What's the heart behind it? That's the falsehood, right? The heart behind it. Then he goes back into Moses again, verse 19. Has not Moses given you the law, yet none of you keeps the law? Why do you seek to kill me? The crowd answered, you have a demon. who is seeking to kill you. You have a demon who is seeking to kill you. Jesus answered them, I did one work, and you will marvel at it. Moses gave you circumcision, not that it is from Moses, but from the fathers, and you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. So he healed a man on the Sabbath, and he's talking about circumcising a man on the Sabbath. Now check it out in verse 23. It says, if on the Sabbath a man receives circumcision, so that the law of Moses may not be broken, are you angry with me because on the Sabbath I made a man's whole body well? Do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment, with discernment. So, here, if one is born, I guess, on day, if the 8th day, 8 days prior to the Sabbath, they have to be circumcised on the 8th day, they would circumcise on the 8th day to keep the law. But the law says you're not supposed to do any work on the 8th day, on the Sabbath day. Sorry, on the Sabbath day. And so here's what he's saying, right? So you receive a circumcision to keep the law, and to make of the law of Moses may not be broken. Are you angry with me because on the Sabbath I made a man's whole body well? So he healed the man, right? He healed the man, and it made him well. It made him well. But he's not talking about just his body, though, right? See, the circumcision, he's equating the circumcision with making well, okay? Because when you separate, right? When you separate yourself, and that's what the circumcision is. It's a mark of separation unto God's people. There's a healing in that, right? There's a bringing you away from the rest of the people into the circumcision, into the separating from sin, right? Just parting from sin into the body, right? Into the circumcision, into God's people. Okay, so here he makes a man well on the Sabbath, and he makes his whole body well. Not just the physical body, but his spiritual body, because he believed, right? And then he says, do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment. Now that discernment, that right judgment, it's not just judging what you see, it's judging the heart, right? It's judging the heart. It's judging, is there falsehood in it, right? Was there falsehood in his healing? No, there was no falsehood in his healing. So is that demonic? Is that demonic? No. Is that false teaching? No. Is that the will of is that the will of God? Yes. The will of God is, it says that in chapter 6, that Jesus would not lose any that God has given to him. That's what the will of God is. So no. So judge with right judgment, Joe. Judge with right judgment. What's the heart behind the person?